Hello, it is your fearless OA leader, Austin Scott, and I will be going over the Choosing a Topic slideshow that I gave a lecture on a few meetings ago. The slides for this will be included in the description of this video in case you want to look at those for later. All right, so first for the agenda, I'm just going to go over the goals of a good OA, the qualities of a good topic, some bad topic examples, and where to look for topics, and you don't have to worry about that homework. You don't have to worry about that either. All right, so the OA event goals, obviously, write and present. It's a 10-minute speech. It's an oratory. But the three main things you do want to focus on are your impact, your solvability, and specificity. So impact, obviously, how many people does this affect? So a good impact would be like it kills a lot of people, it harms a lot of people. Impacts are good generally when you start focusing on marginalized groups, so whether that's like marginalized groups like black people, gay people, I don't know, or like children, for example. Solvability, this is an important thing that a lot of people miss. If you choose a topic like poverty, obviously the US can't really solve this reasonably. At least you can't explain the perfect solution to that in a 10-minute speech while also going over the harms and inherency of it. And then the last thing is specificity. You really don't want to talk about something like abortion or gun control, or I don't know, like an opioid pandemic. Like everyone already knows about that, which is going to make it less interesting for your judge to hear about. And if they have preconceived ideas on said topic, let's say you're doing like an abortion speech and you're like, let's have lots of abortion good, and then your judge is like anti-abortion, then you're cooked. So obviously that's an important thing as well. But this is kind of a little bit less important than the others. All right, so here are the qualities of a good topic. One, unique. Kind of went over this before. You want something that the judge really hasn't heard about before, so that way it's a lot more interesting to them and they'll want to, remember it as well. It also helps avoid being controversial, which will come in a little later. Number two, real impact. There was a guy at the last season who had a speech on zoos and how zoos are bad because they harm animals. That's not a real impact. Like, sure, you can have a zoo speech about how it harms animals, but the guy who's across the way talking about like children being killed in agriculture for child workers is like that's a lot worse, obviously. Three, actually solvable. Went over that before. Four, non-controversial. Yeah, you really don't want to pick a controversial topic. It will not go well. And finally, five, not too complicated. Sometimes you can get really, really, really in the weeds with trying to find like a government loophole or something. And you need to remember that the judge has never heard of this thing before if you're going for the really specific, complicated route. So you need to be able to explain this clearly in under 10 minutes, which gets kind of difficult for some certain topics. All right, so example one, I have the Bergman handicap speech. I included the link here in case you want to go and read it. So this is him talking about basically how handicapped people get these stipends kind of to live off of and how it's effectively insufficient. One part of this that made it really, really, really good and why it worked so well is because his dad was actually one of these people who received these stipends, and he was able to talk firsthand about his experience here. This is pretty good because it does hit on, it's unique. No one else is talking about this real impact. It is actually solvable for the US. It's not controversial. I don't think anyone's, like anti-handicapped people. And it was kind of a little complicated, but it got fixed. Okay, now here's for the next part, which is also touched on a little bit earlier, which is the personal connection. OA is really just becoming really, really, really close to OO at this point, so you do need a personal connection to do well. Three main things with this. Come on, make it real. Please don't make it up. Second, make it actually impactful. Like, you can't just give a speech on something and then just have your anecdote be completely not impactful at all. You need to be able to connect your impact in some way towards the impact of your speech. Number three, don't stretch it. Make sure it actually connects to your topic. It's okay to stretch a little bit, but you don't want to do it too much. So, for example, I remember this was like 2 seasons ago. One girl had a speech about how AI data centers were using up a ton of water, and her personal connection was that her aunt fled from the LA fires. Like, those are not connected whatsoever. You cannot tell me that AI data centers using water caused us to not be able to solve the LA fires. Like, that's just factually untrue. So that's a stretch, and like it's okay to stretch it a little bit, but when you stretch it that much, judges will be able to call it out as BS. And this also goes without saying. I know a lot of people like to make up their personal connections or kind of want to. I mean, it's okay, of course, to embellish a little bit. It's just you want to keep everything factually accurate. You don't want to lie in your speech. It also just makes for a worse personal connection generally. It's a lot easier to deliver a personal connection and write a good DI, a good personal connection, when it was something that really happened. Okay, so right here, example 2 is Aiden's bilingualism speech. So here was Aiden's junior year speech, and he wrote about basically how bilingualism is good and we should teach it basically in all schools, and he went over a lot of impacts of that, which is honestly not a super good topic. It's a very OOE topic. It doesn't have a very good impact, but he was able to make up with a lot of the areas where this topic lacked by having a very strong personal connection. Since his personal connection, of course, was that his middle school was one of these bilingual schools, so he grew up speaking both English and Spanish, and so he's fluent in Spanish and English, even though he's a 100% white guy. None of his family members speak Spanish. It's just he was fluent in it because he went to this school. So that was obviously a really strong personal connection. And that's kind of something that we can go back to here to touch on. If you have one area of one of these qualities that's really good, it can make up for some of the areas where it's lacking a little bit. Okay, now moving on to generic / bad topics. And yeah, so I mean, the most important things are either there's no impact, no solvability, it's too generic, or it's just non-topical. With non-topical, I mean things that are not like I've heard a lot of people give like human trafficking speeches, and then all of their examples and their inherency will come from like international stuff, or like they're talking about human trafficking going on in India, and like, well, that's bad. This is OA. You're advocating for the U.S. federal government to do something. They can't do anything about human trafficking in India. That's just not how this works. It needs to really be a U.S. problem, or at least a majority U.S. problem. Next, so for some of these examples, we have AI. AI, I would avoid. It's getting so muddy. Everyone knows about it. It's way too common right now to talk about AI. I think there's a couple instances where it can work, like AI scam callers, where like people will make AIs of like your child's voice and then scam call you. I think that can work, but I think there's better options. Just anything to do with AI right now is just so oversaturated that I think it's best to avoid it altogether. PFAS, this is honestly becoming more of a good topic. This used to be super popular a few years back, and there would always be like multiple PFAS kids. These are basically like forever chemicals that get into our water and they get into your bloodstream, and if you build up enough of them, you die. A lot of this is just embellishing how harmful it actually is, since they actually aren't like, it's you got to pull a Flint, Michigan to actually get harmed by this, but that one was really only problematic because there was so many people running it. This is a good example of a great topic otherwise, but just way too many people were running this topic. Now it might see some success, but I would still kind of look away from it if a lot of people are doing it. Next, bail. This was the other one that's just super duper popular. I mean, it's easy to write about. If you Google an OA topic, bail is going to be up on there. GPT is probably going to give you bail. I mean, it's good. It has its impact, solvability. It's topical. It's way too generic. There are going to be so many people running bail. Not to say that you can't get success. Vihan Kostov in freshman year made it to states with a bail speech, so it's possible. It's just basically running a super generic speech like this kind of puts a level cap on how high you can get. Because if you're in a room with people, with 6 other people who have very unique topics and cool topics, you're just going to do worse if you have the generic one. It's just the truth. And if there's 2 people with the same topic in one round, you're kind of fried. Next, human trafficking. This is just not solvable. Like, how are you going to solve this in the U.S. government? Establishing a hotline? No, it's not going to do anything. This is just, remember to make sure that you're choosing a topic that actually is solvable, or at least that you can provide a good solution to. You have like 2 minutes to tell your solution. You can't solve human trafficking in 2 minutes. It's just not happening. Next, Zugai. I talked about this before. No impact. I'm sorry. No one cares about cruelty towards animals. when it's put right next to, any sort of human life being in danger. Next, there was a girl a couple years ago who had a stadium speech about basically how local governments are giving too much money to stadiums, and that's like defunding like our education and stuff. It was just too long of a stretch to reach from stadiums over to her actual impacts. So this is a good part of no impact, even though it was pretty specific and it was kind of interesting. But also, like, when you think of stadiums, you really won't think like bad, which is also kind of working against it in its favor. But the main problem with it is that it had effectively zero impact. It was like only a monetary impact. And to speak on that more, if your main impact is we lose money, it's really hard to work with that. You really want to abstract it to some sort of human life danger or like marginalization or oppression or something like that. If you have to use like a monetary impact as one of your like main impacts, then I would say try to take it to something like education or like healthcare services. If you can concretely prove that your topic is taking away resources from places where they would otherwise be used better, then it can work a little bit better. Next, here's some places to find topics. The GOAT, John Oliver, is probably good for most everything. Then, here's just some other places. I honestly have found most of my topics from the Human Rights Watch. The rest of these places you just look. 6DI, if you have like a one specific thing that would work really well as a DI, you can work backwards from that and like abstract out a topic. Sometimes that works pretty well, sometimes it just like doesn't. So this is kind of a good thing to keep in mind. Then it just kind of guarantees that you have a DI. 60 Minutes is good. Asking your parents about random stuff also works weirdly well. Sometimes they know about some things that might be a good OA topic or could be like related to something that could be an OA topic. Or maybe they have a story about someone in their family that, some sort of thing that you could use as a DI and then work backwards from that to find a topic. Charles GPT, yeah, you can use chat to find, I think chat is better at finding like areas of which to find topics. I think it's fine to use ChatGPT to find a topic. Just don't write your speech with ChatGPT. It's so obvious, and they always turn out so bad. ChatGPT has zero idea how to write a good OA. And then finally 10, previous year's speeches. If you want to use a previous year's speech topic, talk to one of us, because I want you to have a reason specifically why you want to do that topic rather than just copying someone else's speech. Because you really don't want to copy other people's speeches. Come on, you want to like make your own stuff here. But if you took inspiration from a topic or you want to do a variation of someone's topic, that's like perfectly fine. But looking for inspiration from previous year's speeches where people have been successful, that's not too bad of an idea. So yeah, still look, these are the six qualities, unique, impactful, solvable, non-controversial, not too complicated, and having that personal connection. This is so important right now. Honestly, if one's the most important, it's probably this, personal connection. I had a Kahoot apparently. And then I have linked here a topic analysis worksheet. This is a homework that I assigned with this. You can fill it out if you want, but honestly, it was just making sure that people were paying attention during the lecture. So yeah, good luck on finding a topic, and I may be making more videos going over lectures that I did in the past, but good luck. And the slide deck will be in the description. Adios.